Looking at me, what do you think is the most challenging for me in commercial real estate?
Are you saying you're a female?
So I have had many situations where I've walked in the room. So now I've been in real estate for 3 decades and, the wrinkles are starting to show. But when I first started, and even today, I walk in a room, and even though I have highest accolades, I have 3 decades of experience, I know how to do valuation, I have an extensive network. Their first thought isn't that I'm an expert in commercial real estate. So it's having to prove myself over and over. That's a challenging. And now some rooms know. When I walk in, they know. She understands. She understands how to sell the benefits. She understands how to do the valuation, but it's not just by looking at me, you wouldn't think that's the case. So that's been challenging. That
Quick favor before we jump in. It always surprised me that a large percentage of people who listen to this show regularly haven't yet subscribed. If you're a commercial real estate operator, investor, or builder who values conversations like this around deals, capital, and technology, please take 2 seconds and hit subscribe. It's a simple, free way to support the show. My commitment to you is that my team and I will continue bringing you higher level operators, stronger conversations, and real execution level insights every single week. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. Welcome back to the AI Edge podcast, where we sit down with operators, investors, and deal makers using strategy, relationships, and smart execution to create real world results across commercial real estate. Today, we're talking about global real estate opportunity, how cross border investing is evolving, what sophisticated buyers are actually looking for right now, and how experienced brokers create leverage through negotiation, positioning, and internal networks, not just listings. Joining us today is Theresa Mueller, CEO of Terome Real Estate, CCIM, CIPS, and globally connected commercial real estate operator whose career has been built on one defining principle: perseverance through execution. With more than 2 decades of experience across commercial, residential, and international investment properties, Theresa has built a reputation as a deal maker who understands how to position assets, negotiate across markets, and connect investors and opportunities across borders. Today, we'll explore how international real estate investing is evolving, what serious investors should be paying attention to right now, and what operators must understand to compete in a increasingly global CRE landscape. Theresa, welcome to the AI Edge podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity and appreciate the warm welcome. I'll pay you later.
I love it. Theresa, when someone asks you today, how do you describe your role in what Terome Real Estate focuses on?
Well, we are an international commercial real estate brokerage, but we do have locally, I'm based out of Chicago/Naperville. So have brokers and my assistants working on local mom and pop real estates, auto repairs, multifamily, office space, mixed use. So a variety of assets in the Chicagoland area or all over Illinois, and even some just outside. I have a land development in Wisconsin, some industrial properties outside. So we focus locally as well as internationally. So that's where I come into the picture. I am the managing broker, and I personally like the international connections and opportunities. So, we were talking just before we started how I have resorts for sale in the Caribbean and some other hotel opportunities in the US. And you're probably going to ask some of these questions, but not too long after this recording, I will be heading to southern France for the largest commercial real estate conference in the world, which is called MIPIM. And that's something that I do attend every single year among other international conferences. But that's my favorite.
Incredible. Who do you serve most often today? Owners, investors, tenants, businesses, international buyers?
Yes, I do have multiple listings, but every time I make a connection, no matter who it is, I always ask, what are you seeking? What's your interest? You said, oh, I was married Street in St. Lucia. I take notes of these things when people have an interest, whatever it is, buying, selling, leasing something. And if it has nothing to do with real estate, I still try to take note. And actually, we're probably going to get to this in a bit, but my son helps me with my CRM and AI. And I'm not going to purport to be any kind of expert in AI, but my employees do and connecting with people and saying, what are you seeking? What are your needs and wants? I can't keep it all in my head anymore. I have over 50 some thousand connections in my CRM. So I'm hoping that something like AI can help me and do more matchmaking. Even if I'm not financially benefiting, it's making those connections for people.
Absolutely. What does a win look like for your client in a typical deal? Speed, certainty, pricing, terms, relationships?
Yeah. Yes. Again. That is a very good question because anytime you are working with a new client, you should be asking them a lot of questions because it's not always just, let's just take a listing for an example. It might not just be, oh, we need this price. It could be speed, right? It's like, I need to dump this, or it's okay if I take a loss because I'm in this particular tax year. So it's not as important. I'm going to use this asset to go buy something else. I'm just looking to dump this because this is no longer of interest to me. I have a checklist that I send everyone when I have a new listing. And so I ask them for lots of different things, survey, P&Ls, tax records, etc. It's extensive and sometimes they might not have everything. I just say send as much as you have. But then I have at the end, what else are you willing to do to make a deal happen? Or what else are you adding to the deal, right? Like say we do have a high price, but maybe there's some other where we're going to pool assets or there's some value add opportunities. So to your point, we should be asking our clients, what are their priorities? Right? It's not going to be the same thing, same circumstance for every client. It's not always just about price. There's lots of other terms and conditions that we need to take into consideration.
Amazing. If someone had to remember one sentence about Trellum, what would that be?
First is to pronounce it Trellium.
I knew I was going to butcher it, Teresa. I told you I would. Trellium, Trellium.
It's okay. You're doing a lot of interviewing. If I had some exotic last name, I'd have to give you some forgiveness, but that happens to be, I do run a once a month webinar, actually twice a month now. One of them is a deal making forum. Another one is a commercial real estate international deals. And I'm telling you, when I see some of those foreign names, it's really difficult to pronounce them correctly. And even when they've told me 10 times, I could still butcher it. So I empathize with you. One sentence, I would say, people ask me my elevator pitch, for example, and I'll just get one funny time. I was at a chamber event and I met this guy and he said, oh, how are you? I went about the event and we were waiting to get on the elevator. And as soon as we got on the elevator, I said, well, what's your elevator pitch? He goes, that's super good. He's like, I'll have to work on that. And actually, we're still friends today from that little line. But I really just say I'm an international commercial broker. And just by saying that, that opens the door to say, well, tell me about that. Or it gives me a segue to ask them questions to say, is there any connectivity? Are they ever looking to buy something outside the US? Do they have someone who's looking to sell something? It may or may not become transactional, but it is a conversation starter because not very many brokers are international brokers, in part because it's really difficult, right? Because there's, when you go across and you ask for something short, one sentence, and I can go on and on.
No,
But
that's okay.
as an international broker, it's making those connections. And when I have listings in other countries, I'm not doing it by myself. I'm not listing this and expecting to be an expert in every aspect. I'm collaborating with someone else that has boots on the ground there. And I'm doing the marketing and trying to find the people and selling the benefits of that property. And every property has different benefits. And it could be, the sellers offer financing. There could be value add or development potential. They could say, all right, we'll trade this into something else. So always working and collaborating with other commercial practitioners. But I guess bottom line is international commercial real estate broker.
I love it. You summarized your career journey as perseverance. Take me into that. What did you have to push through? What does most people never see?
Well, I'm going to turn this on you. Looking at me, what do you think is the most challenging for me in commercial real estate?
Are you saying you're a female?
So I have had many situations where I've walked in the room. So now I've been in real estate for 3 decades and, the wrinkles are starting to show. But when I first started, and even today, I walk in a room, and even though I have highest accolades, I have 3 decades of experience, I know how to do valuation, I have an extensive network. Their first thought isn't that I'm an expert in commercial real estate. So it's having to prove myself over and over. That's a challenging. And now some rooms know. When I walk in, they know. She understands. She understands how to sell the benefits. She understands how to do the evaluation, but it's not just by looking at me, you wouldn't think that's the case. So that's been challenging that, it is very male dominated, older male dominated. And I would say another challenge is I have a smaller brokerage. I'm not with one of the larger brokerages. That was a conscious decision. And that's what when we talk about perseverance, they think, oh, well, who's this small person? What could she really get done? But I have networks. It might not be a JLL or CBRE. I mean, they all have value in their networks, but my networks are different. My networks are CCIM, FIAPSI, NCE, my associations. I go to NER, do the global stuff there. So I have multiple networks. It just doesn't happen to be with a large brokerage. And so I'm getting deals done differently.
I love it. You got to persevere. Was there a specific season where you almost quit that kept you in it?
I don't think I ever quit. No, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 10 years old, and I'm just always looking, what can I do next? What can I do next? I don't even think of failure as an option. Do I get every single deal? Does every single thing sell? No, but I don't see it as a failure, right? It's just, it didn't work out for one reason or another. I'm always trying. I'm always willing to help. But no, I'm always looking to see what is the next best thing. Like I said, I'm not even an expert in AI, and I know it's all the buzzword right now. I'm willing to embrace it however I need, but I'm still in the relationship business. So, AI could probably do a lot of valuation that I used to do. Again, it's not perfect. It might not take into consideration some of the questions that I ask of clients or know to ask all those questions, but it is in the end a relationship business. I don't think any one sector is completely willing to surrender to AI. So I'm still here.
No, I love that you say it's a relationship business. I tell all my people, all my investors, I'm a commercial real estate investor myself. I own property and different asset classes that I'm not in real estate. I'm in the relationship building business.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what this is.
Mm-hmm.
What skills did you earn the hard way?
What skills?
Negotiating, confidence, process, client psychology.
Much more difficult to be an independent commercial real estate broker and represent clients. Now, if I'm an independent as a principal, not as difficult, right? Because first, there's a perception, especially if it's a larger price tag, there's a perception like, oh, I need to go with one of the larger ones. Brokering, it's not as if you get a deal and then, it just keeps on repeating itself. It's not similar to the insurance industry where you get a client and then they're paying for life. So you're always having to reinvent. I don't want to say reinvent the wheel because that's probably not the right terminology, but you're constantly having to be on that wheel to make deals happen. So that's why it's important in our business, if you are a broker, that you're looking at multifacets. So I do teach, I do invest like you. I am the managing broker, so rely on other brokers. So I'm multifaceted, but I do still enjoy being a broker and helping individuals consummate what they're seeking.
Teresa, what do you believe now about business that you did not believe, say, 10 years ago?
Gosh, you should have asked me these questions beforehand, so I had an answer prepped, but I guess you like spontaneous answers.
I do.
People feel that everything is moving much faster, right? So there's certainly some trends that we couldn't predict precisely. So let's take the pandemic as an example. Those trends were in place where more people were moving away from office space, but the pandemic accelerated it. Now, it doesn't mean that office space is not useful and some are going back. And there are times, certainly for medical space, right? Some of the service professionals, whether it is insurance attorneys, et cetera, and you're meeting people on a regular basis still, they need office space. And, some of the office, the vacancy is being reduced. I live in the Chicagoland area. And, when people ask me about commercial real estate after the pandemic, like, well, is that kind of like dead? I go, well, are you still shopping? Are you getting your hair cut? Are you going out to eat? There are more commercial asset classes than just office space, right? But speaking specifically to office space, I certainly wouldn't want to have been a leasing broker out of the loop because that marketplace has been decimated. But it does create opportunity, whether it's redevelopment potential. I mean, it's not easy to just make it multifamily all of a sudden, which is what we need, but there is some redevelopment potential, thinking of new ways. I have my own office space that I'm trying to decide, well, when I renovate it, because it's right around the corner that I do want to do that, what is the best use? I mean, it's certainly not for someone to come in and use a desk, but more entertaining space, event space, teaching space, just having a different, how do we make it usable for our clients, for the people who are working when we're working together? So just reinvention and paying attention what the trends are. Um, just the pandemic accelerated some of those trends. None of us could have saw that all of a sudden we were going to be shut down. But I tell you what, like as soon as that happens, I was thankful that we were an essential business because I was out and about every single day. I was like, what do you want? You want me to wear a mask, a hula hoop skirt? I don't care. I'm out there. I'll do it. So
I love your energy. Absolutely incredible. You have
thank.
an engineering background, Teresa, plus deep
Mhm.
real estate experience. How does
Mhm.
that change how you evaluate opportunities versus the average broker?
Okay, that's a good question. Everything's time value of money, commercial real estate, right? But we're in a people business. So we have to translate the math so that people understand how to make decisions. And when you are playing with time value of money, there's not just one answer. So when you have a property, whatever it's listed at, 1 million, 5 million, whatever, it's not just the price tag, the cash that you bring to the table. You could say, all right, I'll give you something less, but then here are a payment, or, this is what I'll pay you in the future. And being able to take into account, well, what is in the best interest? Because maybe they don't want all the cash right now. Maybe they want to be paid in segments. And so that's like an example of seller financing. And so say something is listed too high, say listed at 1 million and should be at 800,000. Someone could come in and say, well, all right, I'll pay you 1 million, but then here's going to be my payments to make this work. And they might not need all that million right now. Right. So, um, just always thinking about that and playing around with the numbers to make it work for an individual scenario.
I love it. We're talking about numbers. What numbers do you care about first?
Me personally,
Yeah.
well, okay, broker versus investor. So I have my own investment properties. I will say in my own investment properties, I choose proximity over return. Most of my stuff is around me. I would not say it's the best return, but it's easier for me to maintain. Right. So in my own investment property, I don't have a huge management crew to take care of those assets. So that's what I choose. And so I guess the numbers work out better in the sense that I'm not paying property managers. For clients, it's going to depend. They may say, oh, I'm seeking a cap rate or a cash on cash or this IRR. So again, they're going to have different metrics and it's a conversation. What are those metrics and why is that relevant for them?
What numbers do you ignore early on?
Well, ignore is a bit strong, but a lot of times people, I know you've probably heard this before, feel their property is always worth more than what the market's willing to pay. So you have several different approaches. Do you try the market? Do you counsel? How do you counsel them? What are their objectives? Probably not ignore, but okay, how are you coming up with this number, right? Sellers say, well, this is what I want. Here's the magic number. Well, how'd you come up with that? Right? Like, well, just because you want that doesn't mean someone's going to pay that. So I don't want to say ignore.
No, that's quite all right. How do you balance data with human judgment and negotiation timing?
Right. Do they believe the data? And that's always a conversation. A lot of times they have to test the market before they believe the data, right? Or they have unrealistic expectations. right? So sometimes buyers and sellers are not coming together. Sellers can live in a world where interest rates were still between 3 and 4.5%, and buyers are living in the real world where it's now more than double, right? So you're always having to balance that. And what's their motivation? Are they selling just for a number, or do they really need to get out for whatever reason? So it's always a conversation, isn't it?
Love it. Was there a deal where data said one thing, but your instinct said another, and you were right?
Yes.
Can you share with us what that deal was or how that worked out?
There's so many different examples. In the end, usually the seller has to come around to what marketplace is willing to pay. So say we could put it out there, I will present all offers, but usually in their head, they just have something that they want out of it, which may or may not be realistic. Or if it's this is what they want out of it, well then let's look at what are the other variables to make that happen.
Amazing. You're known as the negotiation and win-win outcomes. What's your philosophy? What are you really optimizing for in a negotiation?
The win-win. This is very important, right? Because we are all working with a pie and we think, oh, it's just these slices, but instead our job is to make the pie bigger. And all the time, whether it's collaborating with other brokers, how can everyone benefit? Because it just doesn't end well if one side is doing all the winning. And, there is an old school philosophy, it's all about everything that my client wants. It doesn't matter what your client wants, but it's never a good end result.
So, how do you define win-win? Can you give me a real world example where both sides walked away happy?
Yeah, I'm sure I can give many examples, any particular transaction, because when you start, rarely is it I list something and they get the exact price. Everyone was happy right from the get-go. There's always concessions. And so figuring out, okay, who are the stakeholders on each side and what do they need to walk away from the deal or versus what are the deal breakers? And sometimes you do have to walk away. Sometimes you're just not going to have a meeting of minds or the numbers are not going to work, whatever. And the thing is, I don't want to give away too much about any particular transaction.
That's okay.
Different transactions. And since I wasn't prepped with the questions, I could probably go down a rabbit hole on any particular transaction. But yeah, always keeping in mind, obviously, you have a fiduciary duty to your client. But if they are looking to sell, thinking from the listing side, if they are looking to sell, we have to understand what concessions are agreeable to them. And if there are deal breakers, trying to understand why they are deal breakers. So asking those tough questions. I was just on a phone call today on something that I'm co-brokering and it's listed above the appraised value. They have again in their head what the price point is, but they also have a timeline. And I said, you're going to have a hard discussion, right? Is it this timeline? Is it the price? How are you going to justify the price when you're listed above appraised value? I said, it's going to be hard and you've received offers considerably less than the appraised value. It's a conversation with the client. How long do you want to keep on listing this property and keep on not getting your number?
I think all sellers want more than what is actually valued, and all buyers want to buy less than what is actually valued, right?
And that's why also that conversation on numbers, because sometimes it might not have the return, right? So let's say the buyer is looking for an 8 cap, but it's, at a 6 cap. Well, first of all, you could always come in at the different price to make it that way. Or you could say, what are the value add opportunities that would get me there? Like what kind of investment did I have to make to get me there? What's that time frame? Is there development potential? So, putting all the variables on the table to satisfy both parties.
Do you sell on pro forma?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I do a listing like that right now, and it's not easy, right? But if you have the right mindset, and certainly there's going to be everyone has transactions pro forma, but in this particular case, I have a bar restaurant along a major thoroughfare, and most people don't really want to take on a bar. There's liability, maintenance, employees, etc. But here's the situation. This was closed. It was closed during the pandemic. My client is getting older. And so someone has stepped in, a family member has stepped in to renovate the space. And since it's brand new in opening, this new renovation, we don't have the numbers for the last several years because it was closed down pandemic. But what I can show them is there's a lot of money coming from the gaming. There's video poker gaming. It's grandfathered in, so you don't have new competition coming in. I said, if you can get people in the door, this is the kind of money that you're going to make. You're not going to make all the money from the bar sales or the events. You'll make some, but all your money is this from this video game. And how you can prove that is go look online and you see what other vendors make. So as long as you get people eating in here, eating your fried chicken and buying your beer and listen to the country music, they're going to start doing that gaming.
I love it. What's the most common mistake you see smart people make when negotiating real estate deals?
Stock on a price, right?
Always.
There's
Funny.
many smart people make bad decisions because they value things differently. And so, yeah, it's always on listed too high. But from the buyer's standpoint, always just keep on not doing anything because they're looking for a perfect deal. There is no perfect deal. You got to start somewhere. And it could be messy, right? And no matter what asset class you're buying, there's going to be inherent problems, right? So multifamily, yeah, you're having to deal with tenants. If you make a lot of money, yeah, you're going to have to do some work. It's not like it just magically grows on trees. So setting expectations.
Okay, so we're still talking about negotiation. When do you push and when do you slow down? And how do you read timing?
Okay, well, that's probably not one of my better strengths because sometimes I am a little pushy. I just came from Leadership Academy. I've been a leader my whole life. And then I was invited to this Leadership Academy. I was like, well, I've never had leadership training. So I want to see what they do at Leadership Academy. And we watched a movie. Did you ever watch the movie 12 Angry Men? The old movie. And, they were saying what were the leadership styles of each guy. And Mr. Fonda, who's the very first one when this kid is going to be convicted and it's death sentence. And, he was the only one in the group that said not guilty. And in the end, he keeps on moving around the room via discovery. And I think I really could do a better job of that, of just leading them to the answer instead of telling them. Because I just want to say, here, this is the answer. I know, but they need to get there. So you need to help them lead the horse to the water. So that's something I'm working on.
Theresa, walk me through your negotiation process from first call to sign contract. What are the phases?
Every deal is different. Some are quick, some take a really long time. And what are the variables involved? So I have one of my resorts that's for sale. We had an offer and it's very complicated because we're trading multiple pieces of real estate. It could be also, where are you getting the funds from? And so how difficult or how easy is the negotiation? But, certainly you're bringing the LOI in, you're evaluating what works, what doesn't work, what are going to be the deal breakers no matter what. So it's just every deal is different. You can't just say it's one way or another. And sometimes it's just a conversation before the LOI. So, buyers or brokers will contact me and say, is this on the table? Like it wasn't advertised that is it on the table? I go, you know what? Write it up. We don't know until we write it up. So I never say no. My client could say no, but I never say no. I said, write it up. I'll present it. We'll see if we can work through it.
Love that. What questions do you ask early to reveal what actually matters to the other side?
A lot of questions, but always the first question is can you really afford it? Right? Before we even get into negotiations, send me proof of funding.
Proof of funds.
That's very important, proof of funding, and just understanding what their objectives are. So knowing who the stakeholders are, what their objectives are. There's always lots of questions. That's why I have a very long list of questions, both for buyer, seller. I don't do as much tenant rep, but my brokers do. I generally prefer listings. I started more on the buyer side, but have been doing more listings in the past half decade and less buyer rep.
Theresa, what do you listen for that tells you you're dealing with a real decision maker?
Well, everyone is a decision maker. It's just how high of a level. So this is another, it depends. You just ask a lot of questions. Show me the money is one, right? What is their past? Let's go through what kind of deals they've gone through in the past, what's already in their portfolio. So just understanding their history and certainly to your point, what is their negotiation style? Is it going to be very cutthroat? Every deal's different.
I love it. What's your move when emotions rise or when a party becomes unreasonable?
Emotions. That's why I'm in commercial real estate because everything's numbers driven. I will say when I first started real estate, I started residential, but very quickly moved over to commercial for several reasons. One, I had the analytical background. I had an engineering background. I am a little bit more curt. Some people are more appreciative, even though it's a really relationship business. I do try to cut to the chase if I can. I think people are appreciative of that. Not everyone. Okay. I love Oprah. You might not agree with everything she says, but one thing that she has done is she's interviewed people, thousands of people of all stripes. And this is sage advice, in my opinion, that she says. She says every single person she's ever interviewed, they all want the same thing. Do you hear me? Do you see me? Does what I say mean something? So, unreasonable or emotion, start asking questions, listen, right? So, what we have to do is not let our egos get involved, just hear it. So I regularly go and present my listings to a very large group of men. And I will say, when I first started going to those events, they would give me a really hard time. They still do, but I would handle it with grace. I would not let my ego get involved. I would answer the questions precisely and or with a joke. So you just have to hear what the other party is saying and why they're getting to that point. They say, oh, commercial emotions don't get involved, but sometimes they do. A lot of times, if someone has had a business for a long time, it was a family owned business, it's not easy to let that go. Or if it's a piece of real estate, surprisingly, some real estate really does have sentimental value. Like one of them is an auto repair shop, and it was his dad came to the country with a dime, and that was the first place he bought. And his dad has since passed, and he doesn't really want to let it go. So, yeah, so sometimes emotion does, but just hear what they have to say, right?
Of course, of course. You said you can speak on a variety of commercial topics, including international. From your seat, what is changing right now in commercial real estate that operators need to respect?
The speed at which there is change. And this is something very difficult for people to live with. AI was one of the discussions, and that's accelerating. And there's a lot of uncertainty. So, one, we have speed at which things are happening, and two, the uncertainty. And it's very difficult to make business decisions when we have those two variables. It doesn't mean that we can't make decisions. It's just trying to analyze all the variables. And, for example, right now, data centers are popping up everywhere and people don't like it. Communities don't want the data centers, but yet they want to have their AI. So everyone wants their cake and eat it too. Everyone talks about affordable housing, but then when you come in with a proposal in a well-to-do area, they say, well, not in my backyard. Yeah, affordable housing's fine, but somewhere else, but not here. Even though developers come in with ideas, there's so many misconceptions. And of course, not that media takes a role in this at all, but there's just so many misconceptions as to what are the ramifications and not understanding the consequences of the decisions we make today. So yeah, speed is very difficult and especially with AI because it has become the buzzword, but it's still not everything. We're still operating in this relationship world and trying to bridge that gap between technology and relationships. And, people are going to be laid off. And what does our next economy look like? And we don't have policymakers that are putting in regulations or that path forward or what the right education is as everything is changing so rapidly.
What's changing in buyer expectations?
Okay, that's a generic question.
Underwriting, financing?
Well, okay. I mean, there's so many different things. Let's just say, the Sun Belt states where everyone's, oh, that I don't have to pay taxes and it's warm and blah blah blah. But then they go, oh, I can't get insurance. Oh, They didn't, factor that in. So there's always so many variables that you have to consider when selling or purchasing. It's not just about tax policy. It's not just about whether, is the infrastructure. Now, I live in Chicagoland area. And, when I go internationally, I'm always Chicago this, Chicago that. I'm a cheerleader. We're the logistics hub. We've got great culture. We have the largest fresh body of water. So I'm touting all the stats, but it's not for everyone, whether it could be for tax reasons or it doesn't make sense from a manufacturing standpoint. So, that's where I'm doing connectivity across the US. But it's what you were saying about the different variables. It's setting expectations as to what you are seeking long term, but that is difficult simultaneously because of so much uncertainty at the moment.
Where do you see opportunity that others are ignoring right now, Teresa?
Should I give away all my secrets?
Not all of them.
Well, there's always speculation as to what's going to happen in some of this office and retail. I think the biggest opportunity is if you can figure out where people are going to land in this changing economy, and how to position yourself in real estate. Now, certainly housing is going to continue to be where you are going to deliver. So we still do not have enough housing, and we use the word affordable, but, what does that mean? What does affordable mean, in terms of not only what are people going to make, but from, considering density issues, repurposing spaces. So to me, there's still opportunity in the housing sector, whether you're in the multifamily or a developer. And buying land, we just don't have enough. There's going to be opportunity like office space. You're buying those spaces for, you couldn't even build them for that price. So can you revolutionize how you use it? Because it's not easy to just convert it to multifamily, but there are ways that you can use it in mixed use, et cetera. And there are success stories. I mean, New York has some success stories. So in any asset class, listen, there's opportunity no matter what. So it's just, you have to be a visionary. You have to be willing to take risk. You have to be well advised, have the right team in place. There's always opportunity, but it's another thing to be a risk taker.
I love it. If an investor comes to you, Teresa, and says, I want to expand my portfolio beyond local into international or second home markets, how do you help them think clearly?
So the first is what's going to resonate with them, right? Because I will first say Americans are the least likely to invest outside the US, or Americans of multi-generation. The most likely Americans that will invest outside of the US are typically foreign born. So typically coming from Asian countries, because they don't care if I'm going to get a good return in the US or a good return somewhere else. That's less important to them. So that's why I said typically more Americans that look like me are the ones that are generally more conservative and say, you know what, I understand the tax system here. I understand 1031s. This is the culture I know. This is how I know real estate works here. Yes, there might be different rules and regulations state to state. And so the idea of going somewhere else and learning a whole new system is just not interesting to them. Whereas those who are more entrepreneurial and more willing to take risk and understand outside investments, I think that there's a lot of opportunity all over the world. I can't just say one place or another. I mean, obviously a hot button has been Portugal. I have a listing there, by the way. There's been lots of hot places to go to, but what resonates, if it's a buyer, what resonates? Like, is it a return? Is it a destination place? What do they personally like to do? Do they like to ski? Do they like to go to the beach? What do they do? Because then those type of properties become more interesting to them depending on their own interests, right? Because then they're more likely to invest outside the country. If someone loves skiing in Colorado and I say, all right, well, let's go to a beachfront property, that's just not as interesting to them, even if the return is decent. So just keeping that in mind.
I love that, Teresa. You do a lot of education and community work. How does educating the market actually help you close more deals or close better deals?
Okay, you always should be educating your client. And this is why I said what I wish I could do better sometimes is leading the horse to the water. That's partly a time component. I wind up being much more curt and just saying, it's this. Why do you not see it? Maybe not that traumatic, but so educating marketplace, I'm starting a new commercial real estate kickstart class that I'm teaching, but I have been continually teaching the last how many ever years by doing regular webinars. So on these webinars, I bring on commercial practitioners of all kinds, not just brokers. It could be surveyors. It could be someone in title, attorneys, global practitioners from all over the world, whatever their specialty is. I bring on content. And every year at the beginning of the year, I bring on someone typically from CoStar or some data driven database to say, let's do an economic forecast. What did the data say last year? What is it looking like this year? So always having that conversation. And am I an expert in everything? No, but I know who the people are. So always being in communication with the right people so that we can make informed decisions.
That's beautiful. Teresa, we are the AI Edge podcast, right? You told me you're not fully utilizing AI yet. That's
Mhm.
perfect. Where do you feel the friction most in your business today? And where does time get burned?
Email.
Right.
Even when you try to unsubscribe to everything. So email's a time sink. I was mentioning that my assistants use AI, so I'm not fully utilizing it, but my assistants do. Even say my media team, when they're creating flyers, I kind of give them idea and they're much quicker in turning around because they're not having to hand design all this stuff, which is great because they're producing flyers at a much quicker rate. It was funny because I had a flyer done recently. It was kind of a fun, welcome to the new year, and she used a picture and I looked at the picture and I was like, oh, my teeth look perfect in that picture, but clearly it was AI. So my son's like, it's really unnatural that you have that white teeth.
Love it.
Anyway, yeah, so I am not personally using it as much as perhaps I should. And that's maybe because I'm busy. I'll embrace whatever I need to embrace, but most probably busyness that I'm not doing it. And I should be looking into it more in my business practices as most people. But I think one thing that a lot of head of corporations have to deal with is a communication problem with AI because they started saying, oh, it's all the buzz. It's great. Oh, shoot, we're going to have to let go of X percentage of our workforce. So it doesn't seem so great. And where does that workforce go? Um, I don't know how it will all shake out, but I'm hoping some smart people step up to say this is the path and what it's going to look like.
Which tasks feel repetitive but still require your brain every time?
Well, again, email. That's not requires my brain. That's pretty easy. That's the repetitive. I don't know. Every day's different for me. I feel like I have a lot of variety in my life. So, and if I don't ask, I delegate it.
Okay. So here's a few different keys where lead intake, marketing content, follow up. I mean, follow up is a big one for a lot of people, right? Qualifying, comps, underwriting, transaction coordination, all that can actually be automated nowadays, which is pretty
Mhm.
amazing. What is
Well, no follow-up of me following up, that can't be automated. I mean, I I don't think that could be quite replicated yet, but
for some of it can be.
yeah, certainly you can follow up in the sense just checking in, call or whatever, but conversations,
No, those have to be human. What's the one workflow you wish was cleaner end to end?
well, transaction, but that's the nature of our business and that's why we're here.
If AI could solve one problem for you tomorrow, what would you pick and why?
Could it exercise for me?
That would be fantastic.
I'm kidding. I actually really like to exercise. So if I could just all of a sudden dump any of those repetitive tasks, if I could just make it seamless, it would be great if there was a system that from cradle to grave, everything was covered. But we're not quite there. There still has to be human intervention.
That comes to my next question is what would you never want automated because it's too relationship driven?
Having cocktails?
Yeah, we can't automate that.
I do like a good cocktail or a good glass of wine.
Agreed.
I don't know. I don't hurt in any of those things because I think we could all be surprised by what could be automated. There's been so much I have a 2004 BMW Z4. And when I drive it, it feels so manual, right? Like, even though it still had power window, but it just, in comparison to where our cars are today, we could have never saw. I mean, it feels very Jetson. They're not flying yet, but for them to be able to drive on their own, it just seems amazing.
What's your biggest concern with AI right now? Is it accuracy, trust, compliance, brand voice, client experience?
Taking over the world. I think even AI experts have both optimism and pessimism. Optimism in terms of what it can do for potential and giving us a more liberated life, but they also have doomsday scenario, right? AI is programming itself. My son says, there's certainly an opportunity because it's programming itself, etc. AI still makes lots of mistakes. And so we can't on it. And so he said, I can come in there and help correct some of the AI. But I think it is a legitimate concern. How much can you let AI overtake your business? I have a friend who he worked for, I shouldn't even say what the company is, but it's in the hospital arena, and he is now managing a database for a hospital system. And I said, "Are you afraid that your job will be taken away from AI?" He says, "No, because if the whole system breaks down, they need a person. They still need someone. But
Somebody
we're
has
from
to run the AI.
it being taking over everything."
Agreed. Let's have a little bit of fun. We're almost landing this plane here, Teresa. Let's do a little rapid fire. You ready?
Sure.
One trait you see in top performers in real estate,
Persistence.
of course. One skill you think is underrated in commercial real estate.
Oh, valuation.
Best deal you ever did and why it stands out.
Well, most recently, there's so many good deals, but my office deal where, on the surface, the price didn't seem right, but we made it all work for both stakeholders.
Love it. Win win. Toughest deal you ever did and what did it teach you?
I would say one of my early commercial deals when I was trying to break my teeth, it's just that learning and how to network, how to market, understanding all the ropes. So the early deals, those are the toughest because you don't understand all the variables at play.
A market or asset class that you're watching closely in 2026.
I'm paying attention right now more to resorts, but multifamily would be also second place.
One daily habit that keeps you sharp.
Exercise, meditation, yoga. I work out every
Love it. Favorite travel destination since travel is clearly a part of your life.
I love a lot of places and I have a lot of places on my bucket list, but I do highly recommend certainly all the resorts that I'm selling in the Caribbean, but also Costa Rica. I think is people should put that on their bucket list if they can, because with climate change, the cloud force is going away and things are becoming extinct. So if you have an opportunity to go to Costa Rica, but I can give many examples if someone wants to talk to me offline.
Last one. If you can give your younger self one sentence, what would it be?
One sentence. Listen, I think it's very difficult. I've been doing all the talking and you had to do the listing. And I actually like to be the one asking questions, but really trying to be empathetic and understand, because I tend to be someone who just wants to get stuff done, and taking that time to listen is not easy. I mean, I can listen, but it's taking time, and we don't
Fantastic.
have time, right? So that's our most valuable asset, right?
Of course, time. Teresa, where should people follow you, connect with you, and learn more about your real estate ventures?
I'm on all social media, but my favorite is LinkedIn. By far, I love LinkedIn. I really think it's a great connector in the business community. I don't totally love all the other social media, but I'm there because we're supposed to be there. But LinkedIn, I highly recommend everyone be on LinkedIn, even if you don't have a job, because you never know if you need to have that kind of network.
If someone has a commercial need, leasing, selling, buying, or even international, what's the best way to reach you?
Trelleum, Trelleum, or my number 630-715-9999.
Love it.
I'm on
Teresa,
that.
this
You
was
got an app too if you're international.
Love it. Teresa, this is awesome. I appreciate your perspective, especially around negotiation, global real estate, and the operator mindset behind actually getting deals done. For everyone listening, if you got value out of this episode, share it with an operator who needs it. And make sure you subscribe to the AI Edge podcast. Theresa, thank you for being here.
Thank you for interviewing me. I love the opportunity. I appreciate your time and hope to see you in person somewhere. So you'll have to tell me what conferences you go to. Anyone, actually, anyone who's listening to this, connect. I go to multiple international commercial conferences as well as regional throughout the US.
I love it. Everyone listening, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you very much.